I call the Monday, February 12th, 2024 Crystal Planning Commission meeting to order. My name is Joe Selden. I serve as the chair of the commission. Just a reminder to silence your cell phones and other electronic devices. Next on the agenda is roll call. Will the city planner take the roll?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Schultz?
Here.
Buck?
Here.
Strand?
Here.
Heigl?
Here.
Sumnick?
Here.
Johnson?
Here.
Einfeld Brown?
Present.
Selton?
Here.
And Sears.
Here.
Chair, we have a quorum.
Before we move on, I want to point out that Commissioner Marisani did not seek reappointment. So we have a new commissioner on the end. He's willing and ready to work.
Yep.
His name is Tony Sumnick. Hope I don't crucify your name.
It's fine.
But thanks for being and volunteering, taking the time out of your busy life.
Yep. Happy to
Sit
be
here with us, fools. Also, I see we have a new liaison. You want to introduce yourself?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Tajio Nesterosin. I was appointed to the City Council last April. And every year, as you know, the council kind of shuffles what council members are liaisons to the different commissions. So I am the council liaison for this year. Looking forward to being a part of this commission. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Next is the approval of the minutes from November 13th. Seek a motion to approve.
A motion to approve.
Commissioner Johnson makes a motion.
I'll second.
Commissioner Hagel. Second, any additions or changes to the minutes? Seeing none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against, say nay. Motion is in order.
And I will be abstaining since I wasn't here last meeting.
Okay. You have that marked?
Yes, I do.
You can also mark me as an
Okay.
exception.
Okay.
Next is public hearing. Variance request for the front setback requirement for a room addition at 6124 Lakeland Avenue North. Application number 2024-01. I'll open the public hearing and Mr. Olson, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. Yes, as was stated, this is a public hearing for a variance at 6124 Lakeland. Here in blue is, in the middle of your screen, is the subject property. The pink area in the circular area is the properties where we've sent a mailing notice. That's within 500 feet. The notice was also published in the Sun Post newspaper as required. It was published on the city website. A sign was posted on the property, and it was also posted to all neighborhoods on Nextdoor. This is a fairly recent aerial photo of the property. You can see that the home is located very close to the front lot line, and it's a very deep lot with not much in the back there. So this is just a graphic that shows the original setback to the front lot line before the takings, I would call it, before the road was reconstructed. And I'll get into that in a little bit, but the county, when they reconstructed the road, the home was closer to the property line than it was before. Okay, the property owner is Ephraim Cardenas. He is seeking a variances so he can expand the living space of this single-family home that was built in 1936. The additional living space includes an expanded living room on the main floor and an expanded bedroom on the upper floor. The requested variances to the front setback are, first of all, the minimum setback is 30 feet, but there's three elements of the construction where he's requesting variances. First, to reduce the setback to 27 feet to convert the existing porch to a two-story living space. Secondly, to reduce the setback to 28 feet for a second-story cantilever. And then thirdly, reduce the setback to 25 feet for a front entryway.
Page down doesn't work.
Oh, it's there.
Nope, all right.
Okay, there. The arrows are working. So this is a graphic that shows what I just said there. There is the two-story conversion. The porch is now just one story, and he wants to add living space above that. The footprint of the actual porch will not change. It'll just be increased in intensity by having the second story on top of it. And then also, there will be a front addition you can see there with the steps and the door. And then I've also labeled the cantilever, so that is something that juts off the front of the home. It'll be for a bedroom space. So here is the survey that shows these additions. I've marked the front additions there. On the other side of the graphic, I just wanted to point out that if you've driven by, you've seen that there's construction already going on. That is a garage being built. There was no garage on the property before. So there's a garage being built with living space above, and that's showing it there. That he applied for a building permit for that a few months ago, and it is pretty well through construction. But that is conforming to the setback, so there was no need for a variance. But, just wanted to point out that that's what's going on with that. Then we get to the recommended findings, which are based on state law. The single-family home with a front building addition is a reasonable use for this property. That's the first finding. Secondly, the variance is in harmony with the intent of the zoning regulations. So the intent of the zoning regulations is to not allow conflicts with the need for adequate light, air, and access for adjacent properties. And that finding is that will not be an issue here for the adjacent properties. Third finding is that the variance will not alter the character of the neighborhood. Since the addition only reduces the minimum setback by a maximum of 5 feet, the essential character of the surrounding area will not change if the variance is approved. Unique circumstances. The home, as I said, was built in 1936 prior to the creation of zoning requirements, such as setbacks, which first came about in 1939. Also, as I mentioned, the additions would meet current setbacks if Hennepin County had not taken additional right-of-way in 2012. So that was going back to the graphic where we showed with how far away this would have been from the front property line if the takings had not happened in 2012 by the county. And then lastly, one of the state qualifications is that economic considerations alone are not the sole reason for the variance. And the reasoning here is that the applicant has expressed that the reason for the variance is to create additional living space for the home. So staff is recommending approval of the variance with the conditions in the staff report. The next step will be to take your recommendation to the City Council on February 20th for a final decision. And I'm available for questions. The applicant is also in the audience tonight as well.
Any questions, Glenn or Olson? Commissioner Strand?
I don't have a question, it's more of a comment. Very creative. The design is very creative, use of the space. What are you gonna do with that driveway, the existing driveway? Get rid of it?
Oh, I can answer that. The driveway that's on the north side of the property,
Yeah.
that will be removed. And then there will be, as you can see on this graphic here, the yellow, that will be the new driveway location, so.
Okay.
That was a sort of a condition of the building permit application for the garage, was that
Remove
we don't allow 2 curb cuts. And so getting rid of that other curb cut, which it didn't lead to anything because there was no garage. It was just a parking space. But the driveway now will lead to the garage.
Very nice.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, do I have a motion to deny or accept? Variance? Commissioner Strand,
I move, let me get my number here, to approve application number 2024-01 for the variance request at the home additions of 6124 Lakeland Avenue North with the recommended findings in our reports.
do I have a second?
I will, oh, go ahead. You decide.
Commissioner Johnson,
So Johnson was second?
yeah.
Okay.
Closest to him.
What I forgot to ask, does anybody in the public want to make a comment? Seeing no one approach the desk here, close off that part of the public hearing. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those against say nay. The ayes have it, so ordered.
All right. Thank you.
Close the public hearing. I'm all over the board today. Next is new business. Discuss possible UDC amendments relating to cannabis requirements. Are you taking a lead on this?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'll
Commissioner
this will be
Sutter?
pretty brief. So you have the memo that we gave to the council for the work session last week, as well as the 4 maps, I believe, were in your packet as well, correct? So we had, I think, a pretty lively, in a good way, council discussion. And there seemed to be unanimous support for moving what are currently licensing restrictions from this sort of temporary licensing requirement that we were able to impose in this gap between the legalization and the state actually getting its regulatory agency up and running, which hopefully will be by 2025, maybe?
Maybe?
Hard to know, right? So, but in the meantime, cities were allowed to create a licensing requirement for the edibles, the low-dose products, which we did, and as part of that licensing ordinance, we imposed these buffer requirements shown on what is labeled as the current map. So, however, we need to prepare for the eventual sunset of our local licensing requirements, which will be sort of wiped out by whatever the state comes up with once they start regulating the edibles, and also once they start allowing for licensing the full-blown cannabis shops. So, in preparation of that, the council seemed unanimous on the idea that the buffer distances that are shown on the maps belong in the zoning code, or UDC, not in licensing. A, because licensing is gonna kind of be wiped out, and B, because there's sort of a location, they are a location restriction. So that is more zoning than anything else. So that was item A in the council memo. Item B was, are the maps that we adopted too restrictive? And I think a clear majority felt so, but they were very specific about the way, and I won't get into all of that because the council needs to talk about this more. But there seemed to be support to at least somewhat reduce the restrictiveness of the buffers. And then finally, I'd say there is a majority, I don't know how big it is, it might be a close majority, that supports applying the cannabis buffer distances to off-sale alcohol and tobacco retail. Excuse me. Now, cannabis is a new thing, so they will have to comply with the buffer distances. Off-sale alcohol and tobacco are existing businesses, existing licensed businesses in the city of Crystal. I think most of you are aware that with zoning restrictions come something called legal nonconforming use rights. In that if you pass an ordinance after this business has already been operating, that use can continue indefinitely. It can't expand, but it can continue indefinitely unless it stops operating for a year or more. And at that point, the nonconforming use rights expire. These are traditionally called grandfathering. So, what that means is, very gradually over time, as existing tobacco retail and off-sale liquor establishments go out of business, if they are in one of these buffers, they would not, a new such business would not be able to reopen in that spot if the business shut down for a year. So, like I said, I think there is a council majority in favor of what we were calling parity between cannabis, off-sale alcohol, and tobacco. But the council has to discuss this more, and the reason it's starting at the council before it's coming to planning commission is that the origin of these buffer distances is with the council, because they created these as part of this interim licensing requirement that they came up with. So if, normally we have said that we're gonna start coming to the planning commission first with UDC changes, but this is an exception because these requirements originated with the council. So with that, I guess, I think the next work session when we're gonna talk about this is probably on March 19th. We're gonna have more information for the council, and then depending on what direction we get from them, we would anticipate possibly having a public hearing on the ordinance amendments for your April planning commission meeting. So with that, I'd be happy to try to answer any questions. I know Dan has been working with our city attorney on figuring out language, how exactly it would work. I mean, they just started that conversation. Again, the next work session with the council is until March 19th, but those conversations between staff and the city attorney have begun. So that's all I have to report on that, and again, I'd be happy to try to answer any questions you may have.
Commissioner Strand.
Forgive me if you've answered this in previous meetings, but has the state determined an age limit? Like alcohol is 21, what is tobacco?
21 now.
21
That's
now?
federal, actually.
Okay, and so is that I'm assuming that's gonna follow along the same
Yes.
guideline?
Yeah, I mean, the rationale behind parity is they all have a minimum age of 21. The city will be doing age sale compliance checks for cannabis, just like we already do for alcohol and tobacco. And in terms of like the reasons to restrict these, you know, tobacco is not intoxicating, but it's medically harmful and physically addictive, right? Mm-hmm. Cannabis there's probably different opinions about its medical use, but it does not appear to be physically addictive, but it's definitely intoxicating. Alcohol is kind of the worst of the three, right? It's all three. It's medically harmful, physically addictive, and intoxicating. So, I mean, to treat, that's kind of the argument behind parity, but the key is by putting the UDC, because of legal nonconforming use rights, very gradually we would become as restrictive with the location of alcohol and tobacco as we are immediately with the new cannabis businesses. So this is not going to happen overnight, but certain things like the age compliance checks will happen immediately. Those are definitely in the state law.
But like, you can't just sell beer anywhere, right? You have to, but you can sell cigarettes just about any place. And so I'll be curious to see what the state says about, can you buy that at Holiday? Can you buy that gummy at Holiday, or, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point, and the low-dose edibles, there are more restrictions available to the city for the full-blown cannabis shops. The low-dose edibles, basically, it's like tobacco. You can sell it
It is.
anywhere, in any retail store. Right now, except for cities like Crystal that have passed some type of local licensing requirement that includes a buffering requirement. But Holiday, for example, is currently an eligible location. They haven't bothered to get the edibles license, and I'm not aware that they're selling any, but they could if they got the city license.
Okay.
Yeah. Commissioner Hagel.
Yeah, John, cannabis, does it need a prescription from the doctor by chance? Or have they done away with that?
No, personal use and possession up to a certain amount is allowed for recreational use. That went into effect August 1st of last year, if I remember right. But what isn't legal, what they haven't set up yet is the stores where you buy the stuff. That part hasn't been figured out yet, but right now, people can use cannabis. Again, there are some local restrictions, like, for example, Crystal prohibits the use in public streets, sidewalks, parks, that sort of thing. The state law says you can't use it while driving. That's like open container of alcohol, so it's being treated the same there. But the part that the state hasn't figured out yet is how do they regulate the businesses that sell the stuff? And that's what we're all kind of waiting for and trying to prepare for.
Commissioner Sears.
This is probably a two-part question. Is the state telling the city you will have to have a place to sell it? Or do they give us the option of not to allow it to be sold in our city?
So the state, they allow us to do the buffering distances. We can do that type of restriction. We cannot outright prohibit it, but we have to allow at least one for every 12,500 people, which I think in Crystal, if you're rounding, means we'd have to allow at least 2 full-blown cannabis shops. And then the edibles, we can't set a cap on the number, but we can restrict them with the buffer distances. So one of the other things the council will be talking about later is, do we cap the number of full-blown cannabis shops at 2 as the state law allows? Or do we just rely on the buffer distances to keep them away from other sensitive uses? That's a conversation the council hasn't had yet. I think the buffer distances are kind of the baseline. And then if we wanted to be more restrictive, we do have the ability to cap it at 2 cannabis shops for the city of Crystal.
Any other question?
Commissioner
Schultz.
Hi, I would just like the clarification regarding the non-conforming use rights. So you mentioned that with the buffer zones, they would kind of be grandfathered in, depending on what is passed. So let's say a tobacco shop goes under. Can another person assume that lease and still have a tobacco shop?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a
It's
great
just
question.
to
I
be
should have
closed
addressed
for
that.
that
So-
1 year in between with nothing there.
Right, exactly. So this is true for all non-conforming use rights. So this may be helpful with future cases that come before you. If it runs with the property, not the ownership of the business. So somebody has a tobacco business and they want to get out of the business, but they want to sell to somebody else who wants to reopen it. As long as that physical space doesn't shut down for a year, the non-conforming use rights continue, even if the ownership changes.
So then let's say a beauty shop opens up instead for 1 year and then they close. Can you open it, or 9 months, can you open a cannabis or a tobacco shop, or does that lose that ability to have that reopen as a tobacco shop?
My understanding is the non-conforming use rights survive for a year, right?
Right.
They have to terminate and stay terminated for a year.
Okay, so it'd have to be a year that we'd have to have that beauty salon.
So if there's a beauty shop there for 9 months, but then they close after 9, and then in the 10th month,
Okay,
a tobacco shop opens up, they can do that.
thank you for your clarification.
Commissioner Sears.
Okay, there was only one exception about the shops, and that was daycare. I think it, so what is that distance gonna be, 500 or 1,000 feet?
So that's something that the state law allows us to count as a sensitive use, but early on, the council decided not to include daycares, mainly because there are so many in-home daycares, and they kind of pop in and out of business frequently enough that it would be very difficult administratively, and it also made the map more restrictive than they wanted to be. So they so far have not expressed a desire to reconsider that and bring daycares back into the buffering. Certainly, once this gets to you, if that's a direction you want to recommend they go in, that would be the time to do that. But so far, the council seems pretty unified in sticking with that decision to not include daycares.
Well, the reason I kind of brought that up is, this is my psychology of people. A 3-year-old wouldn't recognize a sign of a cannabis shop. You know what I mean? They don't know nothing. But if you have a cannabis shop down the street from Neal Elementary School, where a second grader is walking with a fifth grader, and that second grader has a brother who's in 8th grade, and that fifth grader has a brother in 9th grade. But the point I'm making is that second grader can read the sign, where a daycare kid couldn't read any sign. So in other words, that a daycare would never be affected. They're just showing the skewed logic, okay? Because when kids are together, if they can read and all that, oh, there's another pot shop, you know? I just got back from Florida. Anyways, point I'm making on this, everywhere you're driving down the highways in the towns, the big stuff now is pop shop, dope shop, dope shop, dope shop, dope shop, dope shop, dope shop. I mean, it's advertised. Okay, I'm just showing, there's something about the logic of the state legislature a year or two ago that came up. They're not thinking this. Kids are gonna pass the word. This is a dope shop.
Yeah, good.
A fair point, though, but I want to point out that one of the things that the statute specifically addresses, if I recall correctly, is prohibition on pot-type signage, like the pot leaf sign in the cannabis shops. They can't do that, and I think that's in a state statute. So they are being, at least in that sense, they're being more restrictive for the full cannabis shops than they are for other products like alcohol and tobacco, so.
That's just making them feel good.
Yeah,
Right, I
know.
mean,
Yeah,
that's what I think.
right.
But
I just have I mean, rather than do buffers, I mean, I'm not for or against, I think we'll do a fine job managing it, but you know how we had the areas where, automobile is allowed in this area, why can't we have cannabis is allowed in this area? Then you can eliminate schools and daycares and stuff like that, where it's more in a commercial type area versus all these buffers.
Very good point. Unfortunately, the statute doesn't let us do it that way. If we're going to
Really?
do it, we have to use the buffer method. That's what they said that we could do as far as location restrictions.
Our legislatures are just,
I know.
And we're not,
Dispatches.
we're not required to even have buffers. We're not required to.
It's the option, our local option for regulating location. Yeah, I agree, it's not ideal.
yeah.
Smith?
Good. Are there any definitions on what the state considers a park? Because right now the map does not include the nature areas or like the MAC wildlife area.
The statute includes terms about where children are likely to congregate. And so we made a call, well, first of all, the MAC, some of these were easy. We didn't include MAC Park because there aren't any commercial properties within the buffer distance anyway, so we didn't have to worry about that. And there was one other park, I think, that
Did you include Hagemeister Pond? There's kids smoking dope there all the time.
we did not.
Peaceful.
Oh, how about
Or Memory Lane.
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
It doesn't grow behind.
So, but
the house.
again, that's already unlawful per city.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, but, yeah, no, that's a good point. The railroad tracks too, I'm sure that's, you could probably hang out. I mean, this is a different world, right, that we're entering into. So these are all good questions. Yeah, anyway, I guess I will get into, the big question was, because of well, first of all, because the Robbinsdale School District has a facility at the Crystal Shopping Center, which is like a 20-acre parcel with 200,000 square feet of retail and all kinds of retail space, not only is that parcel proscribed by the buffer because it's a school, but it goes out 500 feet from there. And I think the council was unanimous in saying, we need to figure out a way not to have that happen. Like that facility does not primarily serve children. Yes, it serves families and sometimes they have their kids there, but it is not primarily a school in the sense of the way it's defined, right? But then we looked at St. Raphael's under the current 1,000-foot buffer. Its buffer touches the western edge of the Crystal Shopping Center parcel. So even then, the shopping center, again, with 200,000 square feet of retail and all kinds of tenant spaces, kind of where we'd want the pot shop to be, right? I would think. No? Okay, well, compared to a commercial property tucked in a neighborhood somewhere, right? Maybe least bad option. So that's why they were talking about, well, maybe we need to reduce the school buffer to 700 or 500 or some number other than 1,000 so that the pot shops can at least locate in our largest single multi-tenant commercial property. So that's the kind of stuff the council is going to be talking about when we bring these different options back to them on March 19th.
Commissioner Brown.
Yes. One question I have, is there any way that we could instruct the city council to write a letter to our 3 representatives in the state legislature to revisit that bill, to strike out the words, any legislation that says that we have to allow a shop like this within our city boundaries? Because I think when the bill was thought up and passed last year, that they were not really thinking real well in my estimation, but I just don't know if that would be an option or if we would be above our pay grade on that.
Well, as planning commissioners, you could move and then second just to, on a statement that, Council Liaison Ona Sorosin is here to hear the discussion, but if you wanted to do something more formal, there could be a motion and a second on a particular statement that we could then convey to the council. If there's a majority of the planning commissioners who want to do that, that's how you could proceed.
Can I ask one question, being the chair? Back to the Robbinsdale Learning Center, are you guys proposing to change what you're gonna allow School District 281 to do as far as usage of that?
No, we would change the way we define schools to make sure that that particular type of facility is not included. We haven't, Dan is working with the city attorney on figuring out how to do that legally, but the idea is to exclude that use so that it would not be under the definition of a school for the purpose of determining whether there's a buffer around it.
Yeah, it wouldn't be subject to buffers.
So it wouldn't be something like the New Oaks trying to accomplish with their warehouse lease?
No, not at all. This is not,
You
quite the
know, cutting
opposite.
hairs that
Yeah.
we got people under 21 that are going to school inside the building versus post-secondary. And we're not telling them what they can or can't do with the property that they're leasing.
No, no, absolutely not. That is not the intent, nor would it be the effect. This is more about defining our restriction on other properties so that they are not impacted by the presence of that Robbinsdale facility in the shopping center. But it would not have any impact on on the Robbinsdale facility's ability to operate as they currently operate or in different ways.
Okay, thanks. Commissioner Schultz, you got something?
Question, would the city council adopting or limiting to 2 full pot shops, would that help the dilemma related to changing the buffer zones for those schools? I mean, for the Robbinsdale Learning Center and St. Raphael's?
So that's, yes, because if we're only going to allow 2 of them, then
Yeah.
the number of potential places that we need to accommodate through whatever we set up for buffering doesn't need to be as generous.
Right. I guess we just need to think about what kind of community we want moving forward. Are we looking for tax dollars on pot shops? Are we looking for building community with other types of businesses that are, I don't know, I just,
No, you're on the right track.
thank you.
It's on the-
In
make a motion
fact-
That we do just 2.
I mean, if a majority of the planning commission feels that way, and if that's what you wanted to communicate, because frankly, I don't think the legislature is going to, they may revisit some aspects of this, but that's probably not one of the ones that they would allow cities to just opt out totally. But it's clear under this law as it's currently written that the council could limit the total number of pot shops to 2.
So then it would be a non-issue essentially with the buffer zones.
It makes it easier to justify that the buffers are not overly restrictive. But so again, the liaison heard that, so it could be part of the council discussion, or you can make it more formal if a majority feels that way.
Commissioner Strand?
But doesn't the state statute say you have to allow at least 1 per 12,000? So if the population goes up and down, would we get in trouble if all of a sudden we have 35,000 people?
I think the city attorney's interpretation of that, because we have about 23,000, is that
We have 2.
we're just, we have to round up to 25,000. So as long as we don't go over 37.5 or approach 37.5, we wouldn't need a third one.
Okay.
And the only way Crystal gets to that kind of population is,
You never know. Right?
yeah.
High density, yeah.
Workers from the pot farm.
We'd have to
train goes-
wouldn't we?
Does that restriction only apply to the high dose or?
That's only the full cannabis shops. Great question. Yeah, no, so
But I'm for it.
the edibles, we can restrict through the buffers, but you can't limit the number of outlets for the low-dose edibles.
Well,
Any other questions?
Um,
Commissioner Schmidt?
So if there's a new school that opens up, say like in the Chipotle shopping area, we would have to amend the development code again to add a new buffer, or would that automatically be applied because a new conforming use opened up in that area?
That's, another good question. The buffer, the buffers are not, the maps are an illustration, right? Of a moment in time based on our knowledge. But the actual law, our local ordinance, would be in text form. It'll say X feet from this type of use. If one of those new uses opens up, let's say there's an existing cannabis, or it could be alcohol or tobacco or whatever, that was compliant, but now this buffer has appeared that encompasses it because there's this new, say, school. Again, non-conforming use rights apply. That alcohol or tobacco shop or cannabis shop can continue to operate, or the THC edible sales can continue as long as they don't terminate the non-conforming use rights, as we previously discussed. So that's one of the benefits, because you're exactly right. These other uses can pop in and out of existence. And unlike other ordinances in zoning, there's already there's already protection for property owners that are impacted by other properties, right? Like something they have no control over, someone opens up a school, they don't have to shut down their cannabis business tomorrow, right? They can continue to operate. So that's one of the benefits of having it in the zoning code anyway. instead of licensing. And no, we would not have to change our ordinance for that reason. The non-conforming use rights are baked in.
Any other questions? Commissioner Schultz?
So you're asking, the point is to have us vote on if we should move instead of licensing to zoning with the UDC tonight or not? It's just a discussion?
Yeah, we just wanted to present you on what happened with the council discussion.
Okay.
And let you know if this is coming your way.
Okay.
And to get some feedback, which I think we got tonight, which is great.
Perfect, thank you.
Hey, I have one more thing to say.
Commissioner Smith?
I commend you guys for doing that. I mean, the train's left the station. I don't think we're gonna be able to turn that clock back, but I like how you're handling it. I like the fact of limiting it to 2 if that's
Yeah,
what we want to do. You might want to look at when the choo-choo train comes through too, so people aren't just jumping off the train, buying their weed and jumping back on and throwing their pop cans outside.
Smoking it on the train.
Smoking on the train.
Well, you know,
I mean, I'm like I have plenty of friends who do it. I don't care one way or the other. But if we're trying to limit it, that's an area. But there's a park, Becker Park's there, so maybe that would be. That's not 500 feet.
Oh, it's.
Are you saying that we should have a buffer with the light?
I'm just saying you want to look at that maybe.
Station?
Around that
Buffer
station.
around the station?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Becker Park provides a nice buffer. Not only does it create a buffer, but the city currently and presumably permanently will prohibit use of cannabis, including edibles, in city parks, on sidewalks, trails, public streets, right? So,
Because that park is used constantly. I mean, that park is always full. And so you really wouldn't want one. A shop right there, I don't think. But, that's my 2 cents.
You know,
Commissioner Steers?
I guess we can see that, I see that there's, hesitation about having this because we're just coming to light again, the people behind the black curtain got ahead of us and we're not happy with the legislators, so that's a given. But, I think the way out of it is just restricted just to 2, the maximum amount of stores it can be is 2. And that would save a lot of headache with our buffer zone and all that. And it would be also the best solution for our angst about the whole situation. The city gets a little bit, we get a little bit. The legislators ought to understand that too, though some of them I know are not capable, but the thing is, give or take, Okay, you got your 2. There's also a freebie for the state. The 3rd store of cannabis, if you want a free high, just drive up down 81 on a hot summer night. Mary Jane Lane. You can get all the free dope that you want. You just drive down that highway on any hot summer night. Okay? So anyways, that being said, I think we just restrict it to 2. There you go. And it's the best solution. Best solution, because I don't think there's a lot of us that are jumping up about this. We're all some are quiet, and I'm just gonna be vocal. We're not happy. I'm not happy. Stay there. Oh, by the way, if we do, then the police can't endorse DARE. I'm just being, it's just counter. It just doesn't flow right. The whole damn thing doesn't flow right.
Any other questions?
I would just
Commissioner Smith?
like to mention that with the high dose and low dose, I think you can just buy multiple low doses and you get the same effect as a high dose. So you can only restrict to 2 high dose places, but you can only use the zoning map to restrict, or the code to restrict the low dose. So I guess the buffers only apply to low dose and high dose, but anywhere that you don't have a buffer, you can still have a low dose shop and you can get just as high off a low dose. You just need to buy a little bit more. which is super easy.
Well, that's what the state encouraged. That's why this is from a state mandate, because it's tax revenue. See, it's just another one of these. It's a moneymaker, for the,
But I guess my point is, if the buffers are really to restrict access to children, you already have those controls in place with any type of sale of prohibited substances. And I don't know if adding the buffers to the code actually achieves its intended purpose, or just makes things more complicated. Because the kids are going to get access if they want to. Because 500-foot or 1,000-foot buffer doesn't actually restrict children from getting anything. If it's allowed in the Target shopping center, you can walk from Target to the other store and you'll get access. Children are going to be everywhere, so I don't think the buffers actually do anything. Well, that's just my thoughts.
Any other further questions or comments? Looks like you squeezed us enough.
I think we have quite a bit of feedback, and that's great. We really appreciate the discussion tonight, and like I said, March 19th, the council will probably talk about this again and give us some direction as to what to bring to you at your April meeting. Or that'd be the earliest, if they're ready. So just, it's kind of a heads up, and thank you for the feedback from all of you.
Next on the item is election of officers. Before I start that, I'd like to say that I'm not requesting or pursuing the chairmanship due to some medical stuff, and my voice is getting worse. But I noticed in the paperwork that I've been chair for 5 years, so it's time to let somebody else.
COVID, so it was really like 2.5 years, right?
It's probably only 5 meetings we had. But I just want to let you know, it's been a good run. I'm still going to stay on the commission here. Just I need to move new blood in here, be it old or young. So election of officers, the position of chairperson, I'll open it up for nomination.
Joe, I would nominate myself.
Okay,
Think I can do that?
are you willing to take the job?
Yes, I am.
No arguments among yourself?
There's the devil on my shoulder and an angel on my shoulder, right? They're duking it out right now.
Any further nominations? Heard last time, any further nominations? Close the nominations. I make a motion that unanimous ballot for Commissioner Johnson for chair. All those in favor?
Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes? Ayes have it. So ordered.
So just clarification, Chair Selton, you made the second from that?
Right,
Okay.
you nominated him, so.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service for 5 years.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Next one is vice chairperson. Open nominations.
You want to do it?
Sure.
I nominate Joe Sears.
Any further nominations? Third and last time, any further nominations? To close nominations, I make a motion to strike a unanimous ballot for Joe Sears for vice chairman. Anybody second that?
A second.
Jim Brown seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those against, say nay. The ayes have it, so ordered. Next position is second vice chairperson. Open nominations.
You want to do it? I nominate James.
James Ifeld Brown. Any further nominations? Third and final time, any further nominations? Close nominations. I make a motion to strike a unanimous ballot for James Ifeld Brown for second vice chairperson. Any second?
I'll second.
Director, some comment?
Subject.
Seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Ayes have it, so ordered. Thank you for your service. Everybody that's standing tall for the position. Here you go.
Sure.
No, I'll finish her out.
Fair enough.
City council actions on the previous planning commission items. Banner Olson.
Yes, you may recall that this was an application you saw in November. There was no recommendation from the planning commission because it was a tie vote, but the city council did approve the CIC plat at their meeting.
Okay. Update from council liaison.
Well, good evening, everyone. I do appreciate the conversation y'all had. I took notes, and so we'll represent some of that feedback back to the council. Some updates and things that we've been talking about at the council. There's been a handful of things. Our last working session, which we had last week, we were talking about just our council priorities and the vision that we have as a council for 2024. The council has had 4 priorities for a handful of years. Unfortunately, I couldn't list them all right now, but a welcoming and inclusive community, strong neighborhoods, and then a couple others. And so those are good, but the conversation is, do we need to tweak those? Do we need to realign those as we just think about what direction our council is going? So more to come there. Part of that also is, having a new city manager in Adam Bell, just the role that he plays in helping us as a council and as a city staff, meet whatever priorities and vision we have. And so part of the conversation was just the development plan that he has as city manager and what kind of things we want to kind of measure his performance on as we think about the goals we want to accomplish this year. So just conversation. I think we'll lock some of those things down in the next couple months so that we have a clear vision as a council. A couple other things that are top of mind. Organics, recycling. I'm sure you all have maybe heard of this to some extent. Our council has had several conversations about this. To an extent, this is out of our hands. This isn't something that we implemented just as far as, charging all residents for organics recycling. We've had conversation with several different folks. I know Commissioner Lundy had some kind of open forum or meeting a few weeks ago to continue the conversation. We as a council are interested in exploring options for the HRG to kind of own and manage organics recycling for the city versus however many waste providers that we have here in Crystal. So having a more centralized option that would hopefully reduce costs. And so that's something that we are exploring in response to just the feedback we've heard from a lot of residents. So that will be an ongoing conversation. I did want to mention the budget. Obviously, the budget season is heavy in the fall, but as you all are aware, we passed a 10% levy increase, which felt higher, or is higher than it has been in the past. Going into the budget season this past year, it was actually projected that we would increase the levy by like 13-14% based on projections last year. So we as a council did try to reduce that intentionally. But there's also some very glaring financial things that we need to address, primarily our general fund balance, or general fund, what do you call it, general fund balance? Mm-hmm. So basically, this is just the money that we have on hand to pay for expenses at any point in the year. At least this is my understanding. John, you can correct me, but the state auditor has kind of a recommended target of how much money you have on hand, and it's X percent of kind of your total budget. We are below what the state auditor recommends, and so we as a council are trying to figure out how do we increase that fund over the next several years so that we can be in a little bit of a stronger financial position. So one option, and we obviously, I'm saying this now because I think the budget is going to continue to be top of mind, and I think we as a council should start having conversations sooner than later about how we address this. But one option is to keep increasing our tax levy to kind of bridge that gap. I think personally another option is to explore what expenses we can cut to address that as well. So I think it might be a mix of both, but again, I share that just because I think the budget could and should remain top of mind for our council throughout the remainder of this year. A couple other things, just as far as commissions in general. We've actually had a handful of commissioner interviews. We had a couple just this last week, and then I think a few in January, maybe it was December, which is a great sign. I think fully staffed commissions is fantastic for our community, and so it's been great to see that level of interest. One commission in particular that has generated a lot of interest as of late is our Environmental Quality Commission. We have currently, not quite sure the right language, but have kind of sunset that commission with the intent to bring it back, kind of revamped, revised with a more clear vision of what that commission will do. And so, again, at our work session this past week, talking about the timeline of how we're going to go about that, what conversations we need to have as a council, when we would start promoting kind of the refreshed vision of this commission to encourage folks to apply to be a part of it. So my hope is that by this summer, we have kind of clarity on what this commission is going to look like. We can start promoting it. And then me personally, I hope we can have folks in that commission come this fall. The timing will be flexible, but that is a priority for our council to figure out how do we address environmental quality, sustainability, things in that umbrella. What does that mean for the city of Crystal? And how do we stand up a commission that will meet some of those objectives? One other thing that has taken some council time is a reconstruction project for Louisiana Avenue. So this is at the south end of the city. Louisiana Avenue, specifically between 32nd Avenue and Medicine Lake. So the plan is to fully redo that street. Residents have reached out to the council, and me in particular, a few different times, just about how we build that street. And so the plan is to narrow the actual driving lanes and have add a sidewalk that connects kind of the path that is on 32nd, and then the sidewalk onto on Medicine Lake. And so we'll build a sidewalk there, and then also reduce the on-street parking just to one side. And so the residents, we wanted to make sure we were listening to the residents, and so they had a strong preference on what side the sidewalk is on and what side the on-street parking is. And so the sidewalk will be on the side where a majority of our residents' houses are. So that's been good, but part of the conversation also is just the speeding that is happening, not only on that street, I mean across the city, across all cities to an extent, but a lot of conversation on what can we do to help mitigate just some of the speeding that residents see there on a daily basis. Unfortunately, there's no good solutions. We have had our police department go out there and monitor that strip of road recently, and they've actually cited some folks. So think that's fine, but as we know, that just diverts some of that behavior to other areas in our city. And once the police no longer are patrolling that area because they can't patrol every area all the time, well, of course, that behavior is probably going to come back. So what else can we do as we think, as we actually implement building this new road to help reduce the speeds? We know that narrowing the lanes, in theory, should reduce the speed. It's not as enticing to go as fast when the road is a little bit more narrow, but that response hasn't felt super satisfying for our residents that live on that street. So I'm sure that will be an ongoing conversation as well. So those are the few things I just wanted to update you all on. Please know that I am more than willing to have individual conversations with any of you. If you have things you want me to represent and bring to the council, more than happy to do that. If I might ask, is there anything top of mind for folks that you'd want to make sure I bring back to our council?
I'll have to meet with you individually.
Okay, sounds good, Jill.
Okay, what was this stretch of Louisiana, 32nd to where?
Medicine Lake.
That's a commercial road.
Yeah. So there's commercial on one side.
I know,
And then
right.
there's residential on the other, yep.
Right. And that's a speed zone. That's people are speeding. Is that what?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, yes, and they would say it is maybe some more commercial vehicles. There's a lot of UPS and stuff.
Well, there's a lot of big trucks.
Yes. And they don't.
That's the reason that street was built that way.
Yeah.
Okay, another conundrum, isn't it? Here we go again. Okay, I'll let you go.
They gotta learn
You
from
need a
our
meeting, too.
mistakes.
Have there been any updates or talk on light rail lately?
Yeah, I wouldn't say at the council level. We had a work session maybe in December.
January 11th.
January 11th, where John and others kind of laid out some maps and just kind of gave us an update on where we're at. So that was a good informative session. There's been some other venues that I've been a part of where I've heard some, ongoing feedback on the light rail. The big thing for us this year is municipal consent. There's not a date for that. I think sometime this summer is maybe the goal. That's ultimately where we just, give the thumbs up that the light rail can come through here. So that's all I've heard.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, John.
There is going to be, on March 7th at the community center, from 5 to 8 p.m., there will be a community open house style meeting, so people can see the latest plans. And city staff will be there, although it's primarily the projects meeting to answer questions about the project, but city staff will be there as well. So March 7th, Crystal Community Center, 5 to 8 p.m. It's an open house, so show up whenever you want. You don't have to be there for the whole thing. It's come and go as you please, but yeah, March 7th, Thursday, March 7th, 5 to 8 p.m.
This state auditor requiring a certain amount of money that we're not reaching, you said we could reach it in 2 years. Are you free to put a dollar figure on that?
I'm not able to put a dollar figure because it's really based on percent. So the dollar figure will change year to year based on our budget. So with that said, I also am not saying we're going to meet it in 2 years. I think it'll actually take much longer than that, unfortunately. I have no idea on the timing. Some of that, we could raise the levy significantly and meet that, but no one on our council is in favor of that, so.
And what ward are you with?
So I represent Section 1, good question. So the south half of Crystal.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
I'd just like to say, welcome aboard.
Thank you, appreciate it, happy to be here.
I just have a question. Is there a penalty that the state charges for that budget?
There's not a penalty, from my understanding. I think maybe it could impact our credit rating. Like, if it got really bad, maybe there's some impacts, but there's no, penalty that, because we're under that level right now. John, correct me?
That's exactly right, but to add on that, there is an operational, kind of a practical concern in that, think of it, the city gets most of its money as I'm sure you all know, from the property tax. We don't get property tax every month or every 2 weeks. We get it twice a year. So somehow we have to be able to pay all our bills during that 6-month interval between these big chunks of money that we get from the county, from the property tax. And so think of it as needing to keep a balance in your checking account so that you can pay bills in between your paychecks, except our paychecks are, there's only 2 per year, and we've got bills just like everybody throughout the year. And so for that reason, there's a practical consideration about why we need to have that fund balance. And the auditor's target is, it's kind of a guideline, but if we don't have a plan to address it and get back to that minimum recommended level, it certainly would affect our credit rating sooner than that, but we don't borrow, so it's, at least not now. So that's not necessarily an issue, but the state auditor is concerned about cities making sure that they're able to cash flow throughout the year. And that's the primary reason for that minimum recommended level.
We used to have accounts for across the board, and then now you just go into a general fund.
What other kind of accounts? Sorry?
Well, before, years ago, when I was on the council, we had accounts for this, accounts for that.
We still do. For example, the enterprise funds, water and sewer, that is completely separate. It has to be run like a separate business. So there's separate reserves for those things in those separate enterprise funds. And then there are capital funds, where we accumulate money to pay for capital projects, because again, we're not borrowing, so we have to save in advance of the projects.
Equipment, do you have accounts for that?
But the general fund is just kind of for the operations of the city, the general operations of the city that are paid for by the general fund. So not the utilities and not capital projects. It's for that day-to-day operations, paying police officers and so forth, that those expenses that happen throughout the year, but then we get these big chunks of revenue only twice a year. And so you got a cash flow in between those.
When money was free, we should have borrowed.
Yes.
And not completely destroy our reserves, but we didn't do that.
We have to pay up front. We have to pay cash. That's my understanding of the sentiment of Crystal. Seems to have been biting us in the butt here.
And now, what's the rates now? 8%, right? So
Just saying.
kind of backfires on you. That's why I'm not on the city council.
Any other questions from the liaison? No?
All right,
Thanks for
thank
your
you.
report.
Yep.
Open forum is next.
Actually, there's something before that.
Anything from March 11th?
Oh, there it is. Staff review, Mr. Olson.
Yes, the application deadline is not till tomorrow. I have not received any applications. However, we will be having a meeting. I'm gonna bring before you an update to the zoning map. Effective January 1st of this year, the Joint Airport Zoning Board, which was headed up by MAC and included all the cities as representatives on the board, they adopted a new Crystal Airport zoning ordinance, and that went into effect, as I said, January 1st. So what I'm asking you to do is to show the 2 airport zoning zones on the zoning map. That's something that we have to update and go through a public hearing process for that. So I'll get into more of the details in March, but if you're interested in looking at the ordinance that was adopted, it's on our website, so you can look there and check it out.
Okay.
Just a little tidbit, it's the first time it's
Commissioner Sears.
been updated in 40 years.
1983, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Wright brothers were just taking off.
They were coming out of the cemetery then.
Let's
right,
not get
that
into
was an airport.
details.
That it? Is, you done with your report?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, I didn't want to cut you off. Next in an open forum. Anybody have anything for open forum?
I just have a question for city staff. With the town center zoning area, there's the tire shop, I think it's Big O Tires, currently for sale in that area. Has there been any consideration to vacating that right-of-way for 55th Avenue North to make that property more desirable for development? And then, like in the city master plan in the future, relocating that street across? Because I guess my thought is, since that's supposed to be a priority area for the city to develop, if that street is supposed to be changed in the future, now would be the best time to actually look at that.
I'll answer this one, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's, we have not, but certainly that could happen. I think the problem is the Crystal Gallery Mall just north of Big O Tires. No matter how many times we tried and how many developers have approached them about trying to do something different with that mall, or at least the south part of it where the greatest amount of vacancy is in that mall, really the only vacancy or most of the vacancy is in that south part, they aren't interested in selling. There is definitely an opportunity to rethink the entire configuration there. Closing 55th had never occurred to us because I think we'd still want 55th and whatever that new street is, we'd want that to both, try to break up some of these super blocks into more manageable blocks where you get more street frontage. The scale of development is more granular. It's better for people walking than the current massive super blocks are. You don't have these big walls. It's just, it's more of that urban feel. So I don't, and the other thing is I'm sure there are utilities under 55th. So we haven't thought of that, but we would still, even if 55th stays, we would still like to do something different with the gallery mall, cutting it in half, keeping the north part maybe as retail, because that's the healthiest part of the retail, and redeveloping the south part with the tire shop. But the gallery mall owner is just not interested, unfortunately. The other thing I wanted to say is 55th, one of the things we do think is that keeping 55th open as part of redeveloping one or both sides of it eventually, we would need to redo a streetscape there to frame and welcome people to Becker Park, to connect Becker Park to Broadway better. Right now, it's just very plain, utilitarian, not really attractive, and we definitely know we need to do something there. But the redevelopment of adjacent property would really be the triggering event to make that happen.
I would add too that we do have little, in our UDC, in the town center districts, we have illustrations of how the super blocks, as John talked about, could be broken up with either new vehicle or pedestrian connections. And so there's one that's shown going right through the shopping center, but that can be negotiated as part of a future development.
Jim, any update on what's gonna happen on that property on 34th and Douglas? Are they gonna start that pretty soon?
Yeah, they're working on it. They're talking about either by the end of this month or early March, coming in, getting their building permit.
Okay.
So I've had some more recent discussions with them too. They seem like that's the way that they're gonna go.
Good.
And
Commissioner Brown?
what is going into the old Dairy Queen? People are asking what's going on with it.
We don't have one. Did you wanna go?
Yeah, because I give them the same update to the council because it comes up at the council meetings too, is what we can say is all we know at a staff level, which is it would be a physically similar food beverage type user. But we haven't seen a building permit application, nor have we seen any plans, so we can't say who it would be because we don't know. But what's been going on there is this potential new food beverage company, whoever they are, has been doing exploratory demolition on the inside of the building, basically to pull everything apart and see what they're working with. in terms of, plumbing and mechanical and all that stuff that they would have to potentially retrofit for their template, for their business, for their locations. So we know there's an architect working on it. We know that there was this exploratory demolition happening inside the building, and that's all we know at this point. That's all. I would love to be able to say more, but we simply don't have more.
Any other further questions or concerns? None? Thanks. Next is adjournment. And a motion to move.
To adjourn?
Commissioner Buck makes motion,
I
second.
second it.
Commissioner Sears. Non-discussable. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Yes. Explain yourself.
All right, thank you.
8:15.
Recording stopped.